We don't carve out enough space in our day to just be present. It's so easy to get caught with living up here and not actually living here in your heart center and being present. As long as there is that underlying focus on making sure you do have some form of movement practice and some form of mindfulness practice, everything else will sort of fall into place around it. And that's where journaling started for me, because my brain was telling me that I was the ugliest, grossest chick in the world.
You're probably one of many that I know that actually battle with psoriasis.
Psoriasis is an incurable autoimmune condition.
Thank you for coming on Train the Brain pod. It's good to have you here today. So you're a very busy girl at the moment. You're one of my best friends, but you're also in the fitness industry, fitness instructor. You're a Nike trainer. You've just launched Air Locker in Brunswick, which is a new gym, which we'll go into later. You also are a media presenter, co-host of Yokayi Footy, and you do a great role in the Indigenous community. How do you fit it all in?
Wow, when you when you summarise it all like that, that does sound like a lot. To be honest, I'm still learning how to fit it all in. It is a bit of a juggle, but I think it comes down to prioritising, and it's a work in progress for me. But yeah, I'm doing my best.
Yourself?
I am proud.
Proud of where you're at, yeah.
I am proud. I mean, I think, as you said, my sister, you're one of my best friends. You've been along for the journey, and for me, it hasn't necessarily always been this way career-wise. I've sort of taken a complete 180 over the last few years, and so I'm still navigating the stresses and anxieties that come with a post-COVID world with work particularly, but also navigating lots of new spaces that I haven't been in before. So yeah, it's a work in progress, but I am proud. I've definitely come a very, very long way over the years. And it's really exciting to be in the position that I am today, kind of working, with my finger in a few different pies.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to have you on, because you have such a cool story and I've seen it firsthand. So I thought that we'd dial it back, and we met at the Australian Institute of Fitness, and I was working as admin and you were doing your course, and then we graduated together, and we've just done like a full circle. But I wanted to explore what helped you step into the health and fitness space.
Gosh, what year was that?
I reckon it was
15 or 16 or
Yeah.
something like that. It was a long time ago.
Long ago.
It's so funny because I remember I used to work in a little cafe back then, and I remember you would always come into the cafe.
Juice place, yeah.
And so it's just so funny that we're now sitting here all these years later as an Adidas trainer, as a Nike trainer, and it all started at the AIF together. I just think it's so funny. But to dial it back, for me, I guess my passion for health and wellbeing started as a kid. I grew up probably quite similarly to you, always playing different sports. I know you were into surf lifesaving and track and all that kind of stuff. So I think when that is plays such an integral role in your childhood, naturally it kind of flowed into my passions as an adult. But it wasn't until my dad got really sick. He got really sick with prostate cancer, and then that spread into other areas. And unfortunately, I witnessed his battle with that over the course of a couple of years. And watching somebody go from full health to, being an absolute shell of a human, and watching a terminal illness take them away from you, it really instilled how important well-being is for me, and that was kind of the catalyst for entering into the fitness industry. I didn't go to uni after school, but I always knew that I liked sport and exercise, and so that was the real the driver for me to pursue my Cert 3 and 4 and go down this path. And then once I started actually working in the space, because for me, I didn't anticipate that it was going to become a career. I was just like really getting into my own training at that time, and I was like, oh, it would probably help me if I know the ins and outs of technique and why programming movements certain ways is going to be beneficial. So for me, it started that way, but then I started coaching people and realised how much I actually enjoy helping people as well.
Do you feel like exercise helped you through that battle of what you're going through with your dad? Like, was that sort of an outlet for you and then you realised that you loved it?
Yeah, 100%. And I think throughout life since that point, and you would be the same, for me, whenever I'm feeling like in a bad spot or in, you know, struggling mentally, exercise is always that one thing that I come back to that I know is the savior. It always helps me get back into a better zone, and knowing that we all have the ability to control our mindset. And for me, that's one of the tools that I always lean into when I know I'm going through a tough time.
Yeah, that's what I love about you as a trainer is you have such a holistic approach, and it's just such a cool thing to explore, because most people feel like you have to exercise to just look a certain way, or to, you know, just because people tell you that it's good for your health. But when you actually understand how you can channel your emotions through exercise, it's a beautiful thing. So just because I know you so well, you took like a little bit of a pivot a couple years back. And I think that you were at a stage where you were sort of with your career, like, as I mentioned before, you're doing incredible things now, but I definitely saw you take a moment of space and go back to your roots to Darwin and get a life coach, and you were sort of seeking a tiny bit of direction even though you were on such a great path already. What was that transition phase for you like?
I think, that period was so huge in my in the, I guess, the direction that I've taken since. And it all came down to just having space, like you said. Yeah. And I mean, COVID probably, you know, it's a weird thing because I definitely, that it was a really shit time for everyone, but I utilised the time as wisely as I could, and having that space allowed me to turn inward. And like you said, I realised at that point that I was really in a bit of a vicious cycle of pattern repeating in terms of relationships, but also in terms of the way that I viewed money, in terms of the way that I was showing up in my work at the time. Like, I really lived in this lack mentality. And so by seeking a life coach, for example, and I, you know, you said about that kind of holistic approach that I take, I'm probably a little bit more on the woo-woo side of life.
Spiritual gal.
Yeah, which is something that I'm really proud of, because I feel like the fact that I do have an ability to tap into that side enables me to get to know myself on a bit of a deeper level. So, you know, I was getting kinesiology regularly, and I was seeing a psych, but then in parallel to that, I had seen a psychic and all sorts of different things like that. And it just, having this space really enabled me to pour all of my time and energy into getting to know myself better. And then I think once I started to understand that, and it came off the back of, you know, ending a relationship, and, you know, naturally most people tend to, well, for me, I shouldn't say most people, I would go from one relationship to the next. And it was always a case of kind of masking the pains and the things that I didn't want to address for so long. And I finally said to myself, no, it's time to just be on your own and figure things out. And so, I did a lot of work in order to learn to understand myself better, and it's paid off tenfold, because now it's put me on, it's enabled me to open myself up to different things. For example, the TV presenting. I mean, I'd never in a million years, if you had told me 4 years ago that I would be a footy co-host, I would laugh. Like, it was just not, you know, like, how has this even happened? How has this become my reality? But I think it's because of the time that I spent getting to know myself, what I wanted to achieve. Like, I always knew that I wanted to work in elevating the voices of Indigenous Australia as an Aboriginal girl growing up. That was, it's always been a passion of mine. I just didn't know what path to take to get there. So, getting really clear on that, even though I would never have pictured it would be me being an Aboriginal, the female Aboriginal co-host of a footy show.
Yeah.
It all came to fruition in the end. And I think, just having the space.
I think particularly in COVID as well, when you're forced to be alone. But I was so proud of you at that time. You really sat in the thick of it and you were like, I need this for myself right now to get me from A to B. Do you feel like the life coach sort of helped you figure out your passions, and like what was the main tool that kind of made you end up being a co-host of a footy show?
Such a good question. And I definitely think that if you have the ability to have mentors or coaches or just, especially if you're doing work on your own, like if you're not working in a team, like you and I talk all the time about, navigating work as an individual, you with your app and your pod. Like sometimes you just need that accountability person or just somebody to bounce ideas around with. So for me, having a life coach was really beneficial because that they provided that. In fact, I think I've been thinking lately about re-engaging with that because I'm, again, not at a road bump, but I'm at another point in my life where I feel like I need that guidance and support to just help navigate some of the ideas and the thoughts that I'm having around work with somebody. So 100%. I'm a massive advocate for that space, leaning on mentors, leaning on the people around you. I mean, you and I are great support for each other. We often find ourselves in conversations about how do we deal with this part of work, or what ideas do you have? And I think it's so important to have that in your friendship circles. And I'm so grateful that I've got you as a cheerleader in my corner and vice versa. But it is really handy to have somebody who's actually a professional. So one of the things that we would have weekly catch-ups, and my life coach at the time, Yolanda, she's so beautiful. She got me like into Post-it notes. And so I would have all these Post-it notes all over my wall with just like plans. I'm not a very organised person, and planning isn't part of...
What did you say about the sticky notes? You had like different topics?
Yeah.
I remember you telling me about that,
Yeah, so I would have different colours for each area of my work. So whether it was like the fitness space or whether it was just like the mentoring side of things, because I was doing a little bit of that, the media. And so each sticky note had a colour, and underneath that I would build out different like ideas, and it just helped me learn how to prioritise things better. And, because you can be, what's the saying, the jack of all trades but the master of none. And I felt a little bit like that at the time because I had no structure with the way that I would prioritise my workload. So just having somebody to keep you accountable was really beneficial.
Yeah. It's actually interesting even just hearing you speak about like the patterns of the road that you've taken when you've gone through something really tough, like obviously the passing of your dad and then your heartbreak. Like it's a testament to you having gone down a path of like self-discovery and trying to help yourself as opposed to the destructive path. So I hadn't actually thought of it until you were just saying those little patterns, which is, just probably why you are the way that you are today. It's so cool.
And I think, there is always an element like, unfortunately, when you experience pain, there is that, you mentioned the word destructive, and I've definitely gone down that path in the past before too. And I know that for so long that's been my method for managing pain, is to mask and to avoid and to go out and party and sometimes that still happens if I'm in a tough place. But I think I've done enough work to know and identify, okay, like that is actually harmful and it's not beneficial to my growth. And I've over the years built out enough of a toolkit to know when I need to lean into it. Even if I've gone out on a Sunday and had way too many wines in the sun, it happens, we're human. But I know that the next day I'm going to go to a breathwork class because that's actually what's going to help me versus that thing that I've leaned on for masking for so long. I think it's really important to to find the right tools that you know are going to help you. And what works for me is not always going to work for the next person, but that's what is so important about taking time to invest in figuring out what those tools are for you.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for anyone that's like in the unknown and just seeking direction and just isn't sure where they're wanting to go with their path?
I think definitely leaning on the support around you. I think
it is a big thing, isn't it?
it is big, and you know, I feel really fortunate that I've got a good, you know, a close-knit group of friends, and I know I can always come to you or my housemate, for example. So having, you know, don't be afraid to lean on the people around you because they are there to support you and help. But also, you know, like I mentioned, potentially finding that life coach or the mentor, seeking help outside of that network. For me, my go-tos have always been mindfulness tools.
Yeah, you're journaling.
Journaling. It could be as simple as writing in your note section in your phone, like actually getting really outside of your brain and putting it somewhere. So whether it's in your notes or in a journal, or it could even be starting to integrate some conscious breathing into your day to day. Like we are humans that are operating now at the speed of light. Like it's nearly Christmas in 7 weeks. It's nuts. I feel like I've clicked my fingers and this year's gone, and it's scary, and we don't carve out enough space in our day to just be present. Because especially now, like we're so connected to our devices, and our devices right now, especially with everything that's going on in the world, like it's so easy to get caught with living up here and not actually living here in your heart center and being present. So I find even sometimes just going outside, closing my eyes and just breathing for 2 minutes, but actually like listening to the sounds around. Practicing being present more consistently is really helpful, and that's something I lean on all the time.
Yeah, you do really well with that. What is like the best piece of advice that you found your life coach gave you at that time?
I would say, that's a good question. Just trust yourself. Trust your gut. Back yourself in. And I think an element, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that's felt this way, but I suffer with a lot of self-doubt.
Yeah, same.
And, you know, feelings of, for whatever reason, I've been conditioned to believe that I'm not good enough, or what I have to say is not important enough. And that's shifted a little bit as I've worked on those things. But, just learning how to master believing that I'm actually worthy and that my ideas are valid and that people do want to listen, and that, you know, that I have the ability to create a positive influence. And so once I started to rewire that thinking a little bit more, things started to shift. So just
trusting.
It sounds cliche, but it is like so many of us suffer with those things, and learning to believe that I was worthy was a huge shift for me.
Just a quick interruption. If you are enjoying this episode, then make sure that you subscribe or leave a review. It would help us out a lot. We spoke about that on our walk recently, and I was suffering with imposter syndrome, and what you see in me is what I see in you. And it's just crazy that like the closest person to you can, to me, you're just the biggest bright light. And I'm so proud of that you've actually stepped into this space now and are trusting yourself, because other people are able to connect to you more. But it's just wild that people around you can just see you in such a different light, and you are your biggest critic.
Vice versa. I say the same thing I look at you and I'm just like, what? Like, how are you thinking like that? And that's what I mean about before, you know, just having those voices in your corner that really back you in, and leaning into that. Because I know off the back of the conversations that we have daily, it empowers me, you know, and that's why it's important to have good friends and good people surrounding you.
Yeah. So I wanted to chat to you a little bit about psoriasis, because you're probably one of many that I know that actually battle with psoriasis. I wanted to sort of explore what it is with you because I don't actually fully know, but also when you were diagnosed.
Psoriasis is an autoimmune condition, an incurable autoimmune condition, and a lot of it stems from inflammation in the gut and in the body. So around the time that my dad, I didn't have it growing up. I grew up in Darwin and I never had any issues with my skin or anything at all health-wise. And again, it stemmed back to when my dad passed away. It was, I think our bodies are amazing machines and
I just got goosebumps.
yeah, and like energetically going back to kind of that woo-woo sort of side of things, like ultimately we are all just energetic beings. And obviously at that time in my life I was, was deeply heartbroken and going through so much pain. And so much of that I was storing internally. And on top of that, we talked a little bit about that destructive nature. At that point I hadn't quite figured out how to access the toolkit. I was kind of dabbling in it, but more down the destructive side was how I was processing things. So on top of the pain and the stress, and then I was, going out and trying to numb that pain in every other means possible that was opposed to being healthy, basically.
Yeah.
So for me, that period, psoriasis, that's where it came from. And I often think like, when you've got so much going on the inside, it's got to come out somewhere. And because everything that I was going through was so unprocessed, it started to come out through my skin. And so it was about 8-9 years ago that it was really bad. Like I had my first flare up and I would be like covered from tip to toe, like from literally my scalp to the bottom of my feet. I'd have all these like flaky, red, itchy sores all over my body. And when you're already going through so much, and then on top of that, like, speaking of self-worth and self-doubt, now I look back and it's like, it's no wonder that I had all these issues with self-confidence, because when your body is just riddled and you walk out the door, and even though I know no one's looking at me and judging me, I'm my own harshest critic. But when you've got sores all over you and your face is flaky, it's so hard to
like keep that confidence up. Yeah.
Oh man, it was horrible.
Yeah.
And so that was like the start of a very long health battle that I went through. And for anyone that's going through anything, any autoimmune condition or anything that affects the skin, whether it be psoriasis or eczema or acne or anything, I just feel for you, because it's really difficult, and sending so much love to anyone in that position, because it really is, no one will ever understand what it does to your confidence levels. But it was at that point that, again, like going down that holistic path, I kind of was forced to figuring out ways, and that's where journaling started for me, because my brain was telling me that I was the ugliest, grossest chick in the world, even though I knew I wasn't. But so instead of continuously thinking that, I would use my journal to write things like, I am beautiful, I am lovable, I'm pretty. Like, I would never say those things out loud to anyone. But it was like my way of trying to change my mindset. And that just became a consistent, repetitive process. And I truly believe that's a credit to, getting me to where I am today. And it's definitely, it's like I said, a long battle. It's been 8 or 9 years of really suffering and getting to this point of being in good health finally. And those little tools and those consistent practices along the way, alongside good nutrition and exercise and obviously medications and things like that as well. It's all worked hand in hand to help me heal.
Yeah.
But that was something, those little things were something that really helped shift the mindset.
Do you notice a difference in your lifestyle when you do have a flare up? Like, what does your lifestyle look like when it starts to flare up?
Absolutely. And that's such a good question. When I'm not taking care of myself, when I'm not prioritizing well-being and eating healthy, and I'm not preparing food and I'm ordering out all the time. But then on top of that, when I'm going through highly stressful periods, it tends to usually rear its ugly head again. For me, that was what I really identified was the root cause. It was the stress component, because you can eat a really holistic, healthy meal, diet, whatever it might be. But if you haven't figured out what's going on up here and in here and how to manage that, then you're not going to get anywhere. When I go through really stressful periods, that's when I would find myself just, again, completely flared up. I'm in such a good position with it today, which I'm so grateful for. And it's taken, like I said, a lot of work. Like, I was at one point getting acupuncture every week, I just went to the dermatologist 2 weeks ago for my 6 monthly checkup, $300. Like, every cream, every appointment, it's so expensive.
Yeah.
So much money has gone into getting to this point, but it's just the price that you've got to pay sometimes. And I just think it's so, I just send so much love to anyone going through it, because it's fucking horrible.
It's just wild. Like, I get colds, it's not the same, but because it goes away pretty quick, but I get cold sores once I had shingles. But I'm just so intrigued at how the body tries to tell you before you even realise how stressed you are. Like, your body would just shut down sometimes, or you'll experience burnout, or for you it's obviously psoriasis. It's just wild. Like, have you had any other experiences where your body's tried to tell you before your brain has?
Well, yeah, it's definitely the psoriasis component. But what you just said there really just reminded me about us as humans, how conditioned we become to living in that fight or flight mode. Like, we are heightened beyond belief at the moment, and it's so unhealthy. And that's why things like, breath work, for example, is something that I'm 6 weeks into a 14-week facilitator course, because for me now I understand and value more than ever the importance of calming down the nervous system. Life is so hectic, and we just become conditioned to living in pain and living with stress, and that's not normal. Yeah. And yeah, for me, and you asked just then, is there any other other than psoriasis? I like fatigue. Just when I know that I haven't been, taking care of my stress and managing anxiety, and it's, truthfully, it's something that I've been going through recently. I've really identified how much I've allowed myself to get to that overly heightened space, and definitely I'm almost getting choked up, because it's like, the anxiety is rife. And I've just been living with it without processing it probably over the last year, and it shows up for me now in fatigue. Like, getting up out of bed sometimes, I'm like, I've just slept for 8 hours. Like, I should be bouncing out of my bed, but I'm like, feel like I'm dragging my bones, and that's a real side effect of not managing stress. And yeah, it's very current, and I know that I'm not the only one going through it, but it's why it's important. It's like, I know I have the ability to shift that pretty quickly, because I've done so much work in the past, and my toolkit is overflowing now, and I know all the things that I need to lean into to address it. But it's just ridiculous that we let ourselves get to this point before doing anything about it.
Yeah, I know. With the breath work, you introduced me to that, and it was crazy. We did it in COVID, and nothing really came up to me. I think I was still in that really numbing stage. But then the other week I went, and I was just like, it was like an outpour, and I just couldn't believe the effects of it. What is something that has come up for you like recently in your breath work, and more so, like, what is your experience with breath work?
Definitely everything that I just sort of articulated around not addressing the stuff in here, like,
which is sort of what you happened with your dad as well, like when you were numbing and it came out in your skin.
Yeah. And it's just made me realize, like, you know, all those things that you explained work-wise, like you don't just go to work and it's like la-di-da, like I'm going to work today. Like every day is a different challenge, or every event that I host is a different level of anxiety or preparation, or, you know, getting up at 5 a.m. to go and coach a class if I haven't gone to bed early, on top of, you know, all these other things. Like the reality is, if, you know, especially with work and the work pressures, more than ever, it's important to carve out space. Like even that what I said earlier about going and just breathing, like closing your eyes and listening to the sounds around you and becoming conscious of being in that moment and really being present, is something that I lean into now more than ever, off the back of these breathwork sessions, because in those breathwork sessions I've realized, holy shit, I've been riding on a wave of up and downs because I haven't been dealing with the work pressures. So that's something that's come up for me. It's just made me feel really clear on, you know, how disconnected I've become from myself because I've put work and everything else first instead of putting myself first. So now I'm really focused on getting back to that, feeling present and focusing on calming the nervous system, because then it means that I'm going to show up when I go to work in an hour in a better mindset, versus just constantly being on that rat wheel.
I always look at you as someone that has, you know, you definitely go outside of yourself and try and seek help to get you through those things, and that's all a part of like the wellness industry as well. It's not only exercise and keeping fit and things, it's like going deeper than that and understanding your body and who you are.
And I always say exactly that to our members at the gym or my clients or just anyone. You can't have a healthy physical body without a healthy mind. It's just, it's like bread and butter. It's like, you know, a relationship. It's a marriage. You can't have one without the other. And I just think it's so vital that we work towards finding those mindfulness tools that work for each individual. It's something that I'm really proud of at the gym that I co-own in Brunswick, Air Locker. We really put an emphasis on both those things, the mind and the body. You know, after every session, we do a 2-minute mindfulness meditation. At the start of every session now, we do 3 deep breaths and intention setting. I think just integrating those little elements will then encourage people to carry that into other, into their outside world, outside of the gym, because it's so important. Like you said, you know, another thing that in the toolkit and what you and I have been doing, and you particularly when you were, you know, you with your health things that have gone on over the years, getting in cold exposure, like putting yourself in a stressed environment so you can learn to manage that stress response. That's why I'm so into ice plunge and cold baths at the moment, because it helps you to manage that stress. You just breathe through it, close your eyes, because ultimately it'll pass. It always does. So yeah, I think it's really important to find the balance between both.
Just a quick one, if you're wanting me as your PT in your pocket and wanting my coaching and guidance personally, then you can download the Body Active app and the link will be in your show notes. So Air Locker is high altitude training. Is that sort of what the purpose of high altitude training is, like for that sort of working through a stressful environment?
Yeah, absolutely. When you're training at an altitude, your obviously oxygen levels are reduced. So normally, like now, we'd be breathing 21% oxygen. In our studios, it's about 14%. So it's like not that you don't have to work hard, but your body's already in a stressed state. So you don't have to go in and absolutely flog yourself because your body's already kind of in that environment. But yeah, again, it's another element of encouraging you to learn to navigate that space. Of course, you only go as hard as you you work to your capacity and but it's lots of fun.
Yeah.
And it's just something a little bit different in the group fitness space.
That's what I find with strength training is working through challenging your body, and that state of stress is it's just like incredible to be able to build that resilience in the gym. I like what you said before about I can't remember what you said actually, but it was something about going about your exercise or going through your day with intention, as opposed to just aimlessly going through like survival mode. Do you feel like with your training you choose a style of exercise with the intention to work and flow with your emotions?
100%. At the moment, I'm obsessed with Pilates.
Yeah.
Because I just think, I don't know, that's just what's making me feel good right now. It's what I'm craving. You still get like a really deep burn and you walk out feeling amazing, but I just know that it's nurturing my nervous system a little bit as well, because it's not as high intensity as what sometimes I have been, accustomed to training like.
Yeah.
I've been finding, and which is something that I'm loving in the training space at the moment, is that I'm seeing so many more women back in the gym.
I know, isn't it good?
It's the best. I'm
so empowering, that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah, once you get the confidence to be able to actually go into the gym.
Yeah.
I think after COVID too, like people are pretty overtraining at home, so it's sort of forcing them to build up the courage to go in.
And not being afraid to lift heavy weight. Like, I don't know, for so long, I don't know, it hasn't been the trend or the I guess the thing that has been the priority. But the gym that I go to now, I'm seeing so many more young women, all ages, lifting weight. And I just think I love to see that at the moment. And that's also a movement practice that I've been really leaning into. I've been loving getting to the gym 2 or 3 times a week alongside Pilates, and then doing a little bit of running with run groups. I find is a really nice way to connect with people. But also it's sort of, I want to run, but I'm not great at running on my own. So if I know I'm accountable to go to a run group like the one that we went to last Saturday, it's just so much more enjoyable. Where both you and I are very people orientated and community focused. So I think anywhere that you can get that little boost of community is really nice as well.
I think it's the beauty of adding variety into your week. I always say that strength training for me is like my staples, and that helps me build resilience, let off steam, but also get my body to a space where my body composition is like where I want it to be. And that's why I don't want girls to be afraid of doing strength training, because it's just so good for not only improving strength but fat loss. You can sort of navigate throughout your week. Okay, I'm going to be quite heightened. Say if you've got an MC event, you would probably choose Pilates after that. But trying to understand your body and your nervous system and your mind, and tailoring the styles of exercise to meet that. Like if you're most energetic on a Monday morning, that's when you'd probably do either your altitude training or your HIIT session.
I love to change things up too. Like, and some people don't. Like, and each to their own. Like, we've got members that come into our gym every day and they love it, and we offer a variety in the gym. Like one day it's boxing, one day it's strength, one day it might be HIIT, and some places do offer that, which is amazing. But like today, for example, I know I'm going through a few things personally, and so now I'm going to a boxing class at lunch today because I just want to hit shit.
I know, that's what I do on Monday mornings.
So, and I'm really,
that's good.
I'm really looking forward to that, because I just want to release some tension. But then I know, I'm like on Sunday, for example, I went and did a yin yoga class, and I really needed that in that moment, because I just wanted to slow things down and send some love to my hips and my lower back, and, just finding the things that you need in the moment, and don't be afraid of exploring a little bit of variety. There's so many tools out there, like, get on ClassPass and go and try something new. But then on top of that, you get to meet new people. Like, I loved that run group that we went to on Saturday because I saw old friends
fun.
and I met new friends, and it was just such a
And
nice
we ran
way.
our fastest pace.
Absolutely. Move over, Usain Bolt.
Yeah. Well, you've done such a good job at doing the half marathon as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, especially not being a runner. So I think it's cool just to, for young girls or just to anyone if they're a bit scared, just to take that risk and set new heights, because like we're both not runners, but we've found a little love for running. So I think you can the more you just get out there and immerse yourself into it and see what works for you, and then sort of, I think it's just working in flow with yourself and with your body rather than just trying to hear what other people recommend or what works for everyone else. It's just, like you said at the start, taking that space to really understand yourself, and then your training can just really complement that.
Yeah, and don't worry if, sometimes I think that we can just put so much pressure on ourselves. You want to have all the answers right away, but it's just never that way. Life is an evolving door, and it's always moving, and one week you might feel different to the next, and especially as women with our hormones and our emotions, and that's the perfect thing that you just said. Just work in flow with what you feel, and as long as there is a priority on movement as well as mindfulness in whatever capacity that might be, whether one day you want to go for a walk, the next day you want to go and do a boxing class, the next day you might want to do a heavy lower body sesh, the next day you might want to go and do a yoga flow. Whatever works for you, just enable that, just allow that to be, the way, and just don't put the pressure. And sometimes it might not make sense, and sometimes you might not want to move at all, but that's okay. Just lift the pressure, and as long as there is that underlying focus on making sure you do have some form of movement practice and some form of mindfulness practice, everything else will sort of fall into place around it.
Yeah. And you, out of everyone I know, you just carry such a beautiful energy and aura, and it's the most infectious thing, which is why you are where you are today. So these practices and the tools that you have, you are a reflection of them. So if I'm going to take any advice of self-care from anyone, it's literally you. 2 things that you wish you knew in your 20s, because I know that you're passionate about this now that you're in your 30s.
Well, did you say
Just
2? I think if I could go back in time, one of the things would be to not be such a little shit to my parents.
Yeah.
I'm so lucky that I have had, and I still have such a beautiful mum. But when I was in my 20s, I was just so selfish, and I would give anything to have my dad back, and he was my best friend and whatever. But instead of ignoring the call or rushing them off, actually stay on that phone call or call them back, because one day they might not be there. And so, I think that I look back sometimes and I'm like, geez, I was just such a little shit.
I think everyone is
when
they're younger though. But
yeah, just I think just if you have your parents, and if you have a good relationship with them, make sure you nurture that and don't take it for granted. Is definitely one of my big lessons from the 20s. The second thing that I would say is that I would put a lot more emphasis into prioritizing learning. I navigated my 20s not really knowing what I wanted to do. I would always put socializing first and partying, and I think that if I could go back, I wish that I had more of a focus on, just education. Because now that I'm a little bit more self-aware, and of course I didn't really know what I wanted to do at that point, but we're so lucky that we have so many platforms and resources to be able to learn, even about culture and things like that. I really, until my late 20s, because unfortunately we didn't grow up in an Australia that that wanted us to know about Indigenous culture, and it you know, I really had to seek that myself. And I grew up as an Aboriginal girl, and I just think that I wish that I had spent more time learning, and whether it was about culture or whether it was about anything related to education, because now I'm so much more passionate. Like, I always want to upskill, and I'm doing my breathwork course, and after that I want to do my Pilates teacher training. I just kind of, if I could go back in time, I wish I had have prioritized those things a little earlier.
Yeah, that's two great messages. Oh, well, that was just so great, sis. I'm really, really, really grateful that you've made it in here today, and being on Train the Brain pod. You're the best friend in the world, and you're just such an inspiration to so many young girls and other women out there, and I love you.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm so proud of you for starting these conversations. I think, you know, for anyone listening, there's always nuggets that you can take out of all these conversations that you're having. So I love you too, and thank you for having me, and I'm so proud of you as well. And I'm so glad that you're in my corner.
Thanks for joining us on Train the Brain podcast. If you would like to hear more from myself and my guests, then make sure that you subscribe, and I'll see you next time.